Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica here with Moms Writers Club.
And I'm Sarah.
And we thought we'd do a little mini episode. We got a lot of questions about how our writing lives have changed since getting agented, since we both signed within the last 4 or 5 months now with our agents. And so we have quite a few questions we're going to answer, but I also want to say a lot of it is actually very much the same.
Yeah.
You know, you're still you and you're just working on your book a little differently.
Yeah.
But let's start at the beginning with the questions. So Belinda asked, I want to learn what new things you've learned having an agent. You want to go
I
first?
learned how much time I spent researching agents.
Yeah.
Because for the first couple weeks after I signed, I was like, like that go-to thing that I would do with short period when I had a little bit of time. I'd get on Twitter, I'd get on Publishers Marketplace, I'd get on Query Tracker, I'd be looking at websites, I'd be pulling up my list, and
Yeah.
I didn't have to do that anymore. And that was kind of
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it really is like a time killer. You don't realize how much time you spend. Like I realized it for that. And then also like looking at the timeline on agents on Query Tracker, like uh, it's a little embarrassing, but I totally did that. I would say that. I would say how anxious I was about getting an agent. I was
Mhm.
like realizing that and feeling like it was a huge relief to have signed with someone. And then the other thing I would say is I've learned a lot more about my writing. We've done a fair amount of revising,
Yeah.
and my agent has pointed out some things that I didn't realize I was doing, things that it's really helped me improve my writing. And it's been really fantastic to kind of have that reflected back at me from someone who is like kind and professional and like also helps me learn how to do things better.
Right.
So that's
That's
been,
really knowledgeable about
yeah. And I have great critique
books
partners,
and this.
but
Yeah.
it's different with someone
It's a whole
who's,
nother level. Yeah.
yeah. So that's been a big thing. I've realized how much of, well, like there are big parts of the writing community that, and whether it's like Twitter or conferences, are focused on writers who are trying to get agented. And I don't mean that in a negative thing. In a negative way, I think it's really wonderful that there are so many resources out there, but it's kind of weird having that different perspective and being like, I really want to go to this conference, but it seems like 75% of the programming is geared towards getting an agent, which
Right.
again would have been a really great thing to go to a year ago. I'll bet there will be some more realizations too once we actually like sell work, because we're still very new at this. We by no means are experts, but
No. And it's nice and fresh. So you're getting like the fresh take on what it feels like. Um, I am very conscious that I still have a lot to learn about writing and a lot to learn about writing well and writing a good novel. And now I'm really conscious about what I write next. I mean, I'm not so
Mhm.
much just, it's not that I'm not writing for myself anymore. I certainly am. Like, I have a very strong kind of, I don't know, like a manifesto about like really being genuine and authentic. But I am just more aware that this next book is going to get read by somebody, it's going to get read by my agent at the very least.
Yeah, and it has to be a follow-up to, your debut.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's more, it just feels a little different going into this next, or even being in the midst of this next book,
Yeah.
because I
So I
know
am
the outcome is going to be, it's going to be different.
The other thing is, so you spend so much time trying to get agented. I have found that that time that has been freed up, which is often like the time that I can't really write because I'm, doing something with my daughter, but I also can only do things with a toddler so many hours of the day. I am spending more time trying to work on my own craft, which of course you should be working on from day one, right?
Yeah.
But like reading, I'm like listening to 2 different audiobooks right now on craft. And not that I think that they will give me all the answers, but just trying to constantly learn more
Yeah.
to
I mean,
continue.
it does free up time and emotional energy
Yeah.
that you can then devote back to actually writing well,
Yeah. I agree.
which can always use extra time.
Like if there's a takeaway for anyone out there currently querying, I wish I had spent less time doing things that didn't affect an outcome, like looking at
Right.
people's timelines. Like
Yeah. Right.
satisfying to see, oh, they're about to get to my query letter. Great. But
Right.
like, that doesn't affect the outcome of if they were going to request it or not, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Melissa asks, what role has social media played in your querying process before getting an agent, and has your approach changed since?
Oh, so the first agent that I talked to that offered representation, I queried her because she posted something on social media about um, just sort of about an aspect of agenting, and it just the way that she was talking about it was so cool and so respectful of authors, and she just like sounded so great. And it was this conversation, and she replied to a lot of the replies, and it was just this really cool conversation. She was looking for feedback from authors, and I just thought she seemed so cool that I checked her out on her website, and I was like, oh, she represents kind of what I write. So I queried her. So social media played a big role in that particular instance. And I did a lot of stalking of hashtag MSWL, manuscript wish list.
I was going to say that too.
There were the pitch contests, although for me in particular, those weren't a big factor because I feel like the type of books that I write are not well represented in those contests. So, but I did them anyway, and I don't know what else.
Yes. I used like the manuscript wish list websites, which are connected to Twitter. So I used them that way. I definitely looked people up. I connected with my agent using a pitch contest, using a Pit Dark.
Mm-hmm.
So that, but so far as like how I present myself, let me read the question again. The role social media has played, it definitely affected my querying because it's a great way to learn more about agents. But again, like some agents are not on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So far as since, so for me, I don't think it's changed a lot. I started Moms Writers Club before I was agented, but I know, Sarah and I decided to start this YouTube channel, and we just felt like there were a lot of things we had to say about being writers, and we wanted to be able to help our fellow writers who were moms. So, I mean, that's changed, but I don't know that it's necessarily as a result of getting agented.
Yeah.
I think we probably would have eventually done this anyway.
Yeah.
But, some of that time that was freed up by not querying probably is going into this instead.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm thinking back to the very beginning when I very first started querying my first novel. How long ago? 4 years ago? 3 or 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
I think my use of social media did change at that point because I realized that that was a place that agents were going to go to kind of suss me out. And if they were thinking maybe that they liked my manuscript and they wanted to offer representation, they were going to go and look for my website and look at my Twitter profile. I became aware in a different way of the way I was presenting myself on social media.
I definitely, I try to always be 100% honest on social media, but I definitely don't share every aspect of my life on social media. And that was true before becoming agented and now, but I also keep in mind that anything I put on social media, literally anyone in the world could see it.
Yeah.
So making sure that I represent myself well. And also I don't want to be like a crappy person, and I don't want people to think I'm a crappy person either. So,
right.
But that hasn't changed. I mean, I think that is something that you should be aware of when you are querying, because you're putting yourself out there to begin with.
Yeah.
Anything that's not like a private Facebook profile. And even then, like if your friends share it or your friend's brother-in-law who you don't actually know, but you're friends with, anything can go up. So
I guess what I realized was that it was kind of like going out for a job interview, starting to query, and that the interviewers were going to be looking at my online presence, and becoming aware of that made me aware of kind of how I was presenting.
Our next question is from Elizabeth, and she wants to know she'd love to hear about starting our next book after being agented. She's heard that Authors have many approaches, discussing it with their agent before starting, sharing multiple book ideas, narrowing it down to one, or just writing and talking to their agent later. So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So in the very beginning, so even on the call with my agent, she asked what I kind of had cooked up next. Since she was my third call, I had a better answer for that question. And she just wanted to know that I wasn't going to write a space opera and that I was kind of like into the same thing for my next book. And then once we had signed and she was getting ready to pitch my book, she said that she's going to try very hard to get a 2-book deal. And therefore, she wanted me to have a pitch ready for the second book. And she literally said, you can just make something up. This is not binding. You're not committed to this. But, if we're looking for a 2-book deal, the editor may want to know kind of ballpark what you're thinking of next. So I worked on that. And it is actually what I am working on next. And now I'm kind of in the like painful beginning stages of writing a book. Beginning's always hard for me. And it's different having an agent and it's, and thinking that this book may get published. It's a different kind of pressure. It's I don't really know how to describe it. It's of course I have the whole imposter syndrome where I'm like, okay, that was it. I had one good idea. That's my book. I'm done. That's all she wrote. I know that's not true. I'm trying to be rational with myself, but I do go there in my head. I don't know. Right now, it feels like there's more pressure on that second book.
Yeah. I've heard second books are really hard to write. So for me, I already wrote the book, like while querying, I wrote another book, which is, I've heard that's a really wonderful thing to have out of the way. But now, because I am, starting to think about the next book and just based off the call, I asked Kimberly about this on our call and she said that, she's very open to discuss it, to talk about it, to converse about like a pitch, or like I think if I wanted to talk more in detail with her, she would be open to that. I have not actually done that with her because we've been revising my book. But I mean, yeah, I think my agent's very open to giving me feedback at whatever level. I've talked to her about a few different ideas for like the next book, and she has helped me brainstorm on those, and that's been really wonderful because she's really good at it.
Yeah. I mean, it can be like having the most awesome critique partner in the world.
Yeah.
Like if I totally changed my mind right now and decided I was going to write a totally different story, yeah, I would totally share that with her. I feel like she's my partner for my career. I want to have a career as a writer. And she wants me to have a career as a writer. Like our interests are aligned and I want to work with her and, benefit from her expertise. Meanwhile, kind of staying true to what I want to write.
Yeah. And I think that, that you can do both.
Yeah.
I told Kimberly on the call that, would it be appropriate, or I asked her, would it be appropriate for me to send you like my 3 ideas and we can talk about what you think would work best in the market. And I think that's a great thing to keep in mind when you are maybe on the call with the agent. I think that's a very normal thing to do. And especially with an editorial agent, something they will be very happy to do.
Is there anything else that like stands out, that feels different or is different?
So, I mean, I think I've said this on a video before, but for me, things started changing. And I've heard this from other authors when I started treating writing like a job. And I don't mean like, oh, I tortured myself and forced myself to do this, that, and the other thing because it's my job now. It's still like a fun, very fulfilling thing. But when I was like, you know what, this is not working so far as like my writing time anymore because I'm exhausted by the end of the day and I can't write at night. But when I started waking up early, when I started creating more of a social media presence, and of course, like being 100% myself, but focusing on that a little bit. And I got a website up, and now though it feels like there's a little more purpose behind a lot of that. Mm-hmm. It was important before, but now I'm really trying to see myself as a professional writer. I haven't sold anything yet. We're getting ready for submission right now. It's really exciting, but even being more like determined down that path. And when I introduce myself to people now, I often tell them, if they ask what I do, I tell them I'm a writer instead of telling them I'm a nurse, or sometimes I mention both. That's how I really see myself now. And I did before, but it's even more so now.
Yeah. I avoided telling people I was a writer like the plague, and I don't
Mhm.
anymore.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and it's still kind of uncomfortable, like when I'm at work and I don't know, like telling my colleagues at work about
I
everything
wonder if
that's
it's different
happened.
at work than like at other places. Cause you're like, I'm being a nurse right now. I'm obviously a nurse, but like, you're also a writer.
I'm not sure what's different about it. I don't know that work even is different. Just telling anybody that like that's how I identify myself, or even like putting up an author page on Facebook, it felt really, I guess it felt really more, oh, I don't know. This is me just being a very conventional thinker in a way. Like when it comes to professions and work and stuff like that, I was as much a writer 6 months ago as I am now. I
Yeah.
mean, in a way,
But,
nothing has changed.
but doesn't it feel different?
However, I feel like I've got this external validation, and now I can be
Yeah.
more comfortable being open about it. I mean, that's just the facts.
Yeah. If anything, it's kind of sad that it took like getting agented to make us
I
feel different.
know, but it just is what it is. I mean, that's the way I operate. That's not the way everybody operates, but
Totally. Regardless, if
yeah.
you're watching this, you're a writer.
Yes, you are. And tell people.
So
Because you
I
will
hear my
find your
daughter,
tribe if you actually tell people,
yeah,
you know?
I hear my daughter waking up. So
Okay.
we've got to wrap up the show.
Nap time is over. We got to go.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.